Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Epic Marvel Podcast YouTube channel. It's curtain time. That's great. I don't know if that's going to be my new catchphrase, but I sure hope not because it's not very good. Sorry, Phil. But anyway, nice to see you. Hello, Mr. Tex and Steven and Ryan and Logan. What on earth are all of you doing here instead of um watching Near Mint Condition right now? Because I think they have J. Scott Campbell on there talking about a new artist edition that's being kickstarted right now. You'd rather be here with me, and that means a lot, especially since I already said that there are not going to be any epics or finest in today's stream because I don't have any. I have on order um, DC Finest Horror, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I haven't got it yet. I just got my shipping notification today, so that means it's not going to be here for a little while still. You are dual watching on the phone. Wow, that is dedication. Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Tex. Um, totally epic. You think the intro is epic? Well, Logan likes it. We'll see. I don't know. If there are any other contenders for any better catchphrases, then please let me know. But Kryptonite Kid is here. The Toon Grump is here. You also ordered DC Horror. Yeah, it's coming. It's gonna be good. So stoked for that book. Me too. And then yeah, Marvel hasn't sent me anything for this week. Not sure what's next on the schedule. Um, I just talked about last week. I talked about Generation X, which comes out next week, and I talked about Micronauts, which comes out this week. And I can't remember what's next. Maybe I should check. I'm going to check this quickly, and then we'll talk about what I said I was going to talk about in the little description, which is a bunch of books that I picked up at a library sale. I'll tell you all about that experience because it was quite fun. Okay, it should be Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3, Homecoming, and that's it. That's what it should be this week. So I don't know if I just missed that shipment or whatever, but hopefully Marvel will send that one to me. We'll see what happens. Okay, so here's the deal. So the Vancouver Public Library downtown branch is the main branch in Vancouver, and it's huge. It's a really big library, and they have sales, big sales twice a year. They have them in September, and they have another one in the spring. And these are not library discards. What they do is throughout the year, they just collect donations, and whatever they don't put on their shelves, they stick in storage, and then have these massive sales for when just as fundraisers for the library, and everything is like $2 or $3. Used to be cheaper, like dollar books or whatever, but inflation, so now we're up to $2 or $3. $2 for paperbacks, $3 for hardcovers, and sometimes we get great deals. Like I picked up a bunch of early Spider-Man Marvel Masterworks hardcover for just $2 each, and that was great. I think it was volumes 3, 4, 5, and 6. And because I have the epics, I went and found a good home for those ones because I wasn't going to get them for myself. But so this time, they didn't have any. They have a large collection of just graphic novels from Marvel and DC. They didn't have a whole lot of that, but I got a lot of comic strip books, which is great for me because I love that stuff. A lot of comic history books, and we're gonna go through and see what I got here. Because and some of you may not be interested in comics, but that is a that this is a big interest of mine, so you're gonna have to bear with me here. Yeah, what a bargain indeed. $2 for Marvel Masterworks is really good, and I was tempted to keep them because they're Marvel Masterworks, but I knew somebody who wanted a good home, who wanted them, and so I was able to just kind of gift them, and that was really nice, and they appreciated that, and and I still got my epics, so all of that content is fine. I know some of you are like, but Marvel Masterworks are better. Nah, it's okay. I want to keep the epic collections. Okay, this is Pogo. This is my first $2 book. Pogo's Bats and Bells free. If you know Walt Kelly, he's the author artist in this comic strip. This newspaper comic strip was from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and he did a lot of wordplay with these ones. I can't open it too. You can hear it cracking. That's the glue in the spine because this is a book that was published in, I think, the late, maybe the early 70s. No, late, yeah, 1976. Oh, it's a little newer than I thought, but still, the glue is dried. So if I open it too much, then all of the pages are going to fall out. But it's about a possum who lives in the bayou or the swamps, and is he has a whole bunch of animal friends, and they just kind of have fun. Is a slice of life in the swamp. They have interesting people who come by and say hi. It's funny and it's a lot of wordplay. It's hard to read sometimes um because the characters talk um in this southern drawl, and he really likes to play with the words. But I really like this comic strip. Fantastic artist. He was trained um, at the Disney Studios, and you can tell from his artwork he puts a lot of detail. It's definitely not Peanuts, which I really enjoy also, but that one is a lot more artistic than these guys. So there you go. I'm going to go through these pretty quick because I got like 20 books. This one was a buck. Roger Rabbit, based on, of course, the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This is issue number 4. Um, just picked up a couple of comics. I haven't even looked. Oh yeah, Generation X Gen 13 crossover. This was a crossover between Image and Marvel, and I got this one because it is the 3D version of it. It didn't come with glasses, but they printed a regular edition. Oh, the sticker's right on top. I'll have to take that off. They printed a regular edition, and then they have this 3D version, which you can't really tell from the screen because the it's still colored, but it does look cool when you have the red and green the red and blue glasses on. But all of the artworks by Arthur Adams on here, which is very cool. The only Generation X work that he did, I'm pretty sure. Oh, you can kind of see here that they've got the red and blue overlay over top of that. So if you get out your 3D glasses, you'll be able to see it. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell from this panel right here as well. But yeah, it's very cool. Let's see here. I only know Pogo from an homage Alan Moore did an issue of Swamp Thing, and Conroy Jet says the same thing. I didn't even know that. Swamp Thing 32. I'm gonna have to look that up. I actually have that downstairs and I have not read it. So that's pretty cool. Um, Roger Rabbit, nice. Holy cow, I feel like those Roger Rabbit books are pretty expensive. They're not that expensive. At a comic shop, you might find them for $5 or under. They're actually not that expensive. So in this one, it came double bagged with the other Generation X Gen 13 crossover, the one that Marvel published a year after this one, and with Salvador LaRocca on the artwork. And it's not 3D, just regular. That one didn't have a 3D edition. This is really cool. I also got the first 2 issues of Ghostbusters. Um, well, maybe not the first 2 issues. Issues 1 and 3. This was just $1 for the both of them, which is pretty cool. Pretty good condition too. Spines don't look cracked, and the pages are all nice. This comic it's put out by Now Comics, who was a comic company in the 80s, and it's based on the cartoon series, of course. I only had a couple of these issues ever, so I've never had number 1, so it'll be cool to look through this one. I think IDW published kind of smaller digest size omnis of all of this material. There's a Slimer centerfold for you. Okay, let's see what else is here. Oh, here's a good one. Who knows this magazine? Raw, high culture for lowbrows. That comics were always called lowbrow, the lowbrow art form. Kind of a lot of people kind of still consider it to be that. And Art Spiegelman really did. He wanted to put more of a high culture spin on comics, and so he gathered up a whole bunch of different comic artists and made a magazine. And a lot of people kind of got their starts through here. This was published through Fantagraphics. No, this was published through Penguin. But a lot of people are published through Fantagraphics now. It's got some old comics, like this is Crazy Cat, and a really old comic strip from like 120 years ago. And let's see, this is um, this is a comic strip, a Spanish, I believe, a Spanish comic strip called Alex Sinner, and is very. It's got a lot of kind of Alex Toth inspired artwork to it. A crime noir. He's a brutal, brutal guy who doesn't really have any regard for anything really. Um, this who is this one? Oh, Adeline Crumb, Robert Crumb's partner. She did a lot of kind of autobiographical comics. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. Um, it's just a grab bag. Chris Ware. Let's see here. Who else is here? Oh yeah, and this is where Mouse was first serialized in here. So these are the original printing of Mouse before it was collected into its own graphic novel. So that's pretty cool. So Raw was a magazine before, and then for volume two, they turned it into kind of more of a paperback book. They expanded the page count greatly. It only lasted a few issues before, because the comic book crowd wasn't quite ready for something like this, and so it didn't do. Maybe it did well. I'm not sure, but it got canceled after a few issues. Um, so anyway, that's that. I'm gonna keep on going here. I got four, one, no, five books of Crazy Cat, Crazy and Ignatz. These were published by Eclipse Comics. Fantagraphics has done numerous printings of this stuff. It's all public domain now. And this comic strip is one of the greatest of all times, starring a cat and a mouse. And I gotta highlight this comment. So Ra was the first House of Mouse. Yes, yes, it was. Um, I love Phil's jokes. His catchphrases could do some work, but his jokes are good. Anyway, this comic strip was in newspapers back in like the 1910s and 1920s, and very weird, surreal, absurdist, and a lot of fun. And it's had like some cartoon spin-offs over the years and such, but these were published by Eclipse, which is a comic company in the 80s, run by Dean Mullaney, and he loves old comic strips, and he went on to create his own company called the Library of American Comics that continue to publish more comic strips. In fact, we just launched a crowdfunding campaign to bring Dick Tracy back in print in soft covers that launched today on BackerKit, and so he's still doing work. But he way back in the 80s, he was collecting Crazy Cat um, in these paperback compilations, and so there's five of them in a 6 volume series, which I already have number four, which I felt bad leaving just number four at the table there, but it's what it is. Oh, another Pogo magazine. This one is a little newspaper or kind of magazine with newspaper articles and little essays about the strip with some examples of the strip. So it's called the Okefenokee Star, and Okefenokee is the name of the swamp that they lived in. Um, If I had $1 for every one of Dean Mullaney's letters I read in Marvel letter columns, I'd be a rich man today. That's very true. That's where he got his start. He wrote a lot of letters. He and Don McGregor wrote tons of letters, and they became friends because they started reading each other's letters. And back then, they would print the addresses in the letter columns. And so they started writing to each other and became good friends. To this day, they're still really great friends. And when Marvel was expanding their editorialship and all of that kind of stuff in the 70s, and looking for new writers and new artists and all that kind of stuff in the 70s, Dean Mullaney and um, Don McGregor both went in for jobs, and John McGregor got some writing stuff, and I can't remember exactly how the story goes. Dean told it to me one time. It is like he was going to go to Marvel, but instead Marvel decided to go with somebody else. It might have been Archie Goodwin or something. I don't remember. And so then Dean decided that he was going to create his own comic book company at that point. So he got the ball rolling and did made Eclipse Comics, which was the first comic book company to be um, centered around like purely for the direct market, and had creator owned comics, one of the first comic book companies to do creator owned stuff so that creators would retain the rights to their comics. Um, the Dick Tracy with the slipcase looks amazing, Curtis. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit later, Matt. Thanks for that comment. That's He's talking about the backer kit that we just started. So this is Fearless Fosdick, who is a character from the comic strip Little Abner, and it's a parody, of course, of Dick Tracy. And so every once in a while in the comic strip, in the Little Abner comic strip, Abner would be reading the comic pages of the newspaper, and he would come across this character. And then the comic strip for a couple of weeks would go on a Fearless Fosdick adventure. So this book collects all of the Fearless Fosdick stories, and they make fun of Dick Tracy, Chester Gould's Dick Tracy, who was a contemporary of Little Abner at the time. And so it's just a brilliant satire, really funny. The strip itself, Little Abner, is quite a funny strip. So all black and white, as newspaper comics were back in the day. So this spans many years because, like I said, it was only little 2 week sprints at a time that Fearless Fosdick would appear in the papers, and then they would go back to the regular continuity. And speaking of Dick Tracy, I found a couple of Tracy books. Dick Tracy, America's most famous detective. And this is a collection of some of his greatest stories. And there's some essays in here, including a long essay by Chester Gould himself, which I have not read yet. It's got some of the first appearances of the character and some of his greatest stories through the years. And I love this stuff. Dick Tracy is just such a fun comic strip. And then it has some of the later stuff after Dick Tracy retired by Max Allan Collins and Rick Fletcher. And then even after Rick Fletcher left and Dick Locker stepped in, it has some of his stories back there as well. So I think the latest stories in here are probably from the late 80s, maybe. This book was published in 87. So yeah. And then to complement that, they also had this hardcover. This one was $3. The Celebrated Cases of Dick Tracy from 1931 to 1951. If you are only going to ever get one book for Dick Tracy, I would recommend this one here. It's got his best stories with all of his best characters. So here they are back there: the Mole, Flat Top, Breathless Mahoney, Little Face, BB Eyes, and the Brow. And there's more in here as well. And whoops. So this book is not hard to find. It's pretty much everywhere. It was printed so many times that it's not hard to find copies, used copies. It was printed back in, I'm going to say the late 70s, but let's just check. Oh, newer than I thought. 1990. At least this printing is 1990. But yeah, this one, if you were like I said, if you're only going to get one volume of Dick Tracy that is a good representation of his stories and his characters, this is the book to get: The Celebrated Cases. And I'm happy that I have a copy now with a dust jacket that's in nice condition. um I wish the Dick Tracy collections weren't so out of print. Well, guess what? We just launched a crowdfunding campaign on BackerKit today. If you go to BackerKit and look up Dick Tracy, to get the comics back in print, and we got new softcover collections. We're kickstarting it with 4 volumes, 1941 to 1945. A lot of those stories are in here because these are Dick Tracy's best years. It was in the 40s there. So I recommend checking that out, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Here's an odd one. I've never seen this before. Harvey Kurtzman's Strange Adventures, published by Eclipse, which was an imprint of Marvel Comics. And um and Harvey Kurtzman is a Mad Magazine artist and a really funny cartoonist, or he was. He passed away a long time ago. And this, I've never even heard of this book before, but it's got work from Sergio Aragonis, Robert Crumb, Rick Geary, Dave Gibbons, and of course Kurtzman. All of the stories are written by Kurtzman and with artwork by different people. So it's just so cool. And so Art Spiegelman does a little intro here. Epic Comics was an imprint of Marvel, and where they would do creator-owned work, and they did a bunch of these standalone graphic novels. They call them Marvel graphic novels number whatever 1, 2, 3, and I don't know where this one falls in line with that, but it's very, very cool. And so it's got some really cool. It's all funny. It's all satire. It's all absurd. Here's the Sergio, not starring Marvel characters except for one story, which is not this one, Vampire Named Mel. It's the one that's drawn by Dave Gibbons right at the end here. It's called Super Surfer. And if you, so Dave Gibbons, of course, you probably know from Watchmen. Did you know that he did funny stuff too? This is something that appeared in like Not Brand Ech. And he goes to a comic convention, and you even see some of the Watchmen characters in there if you look carefully. But this is a cool story, and I don't know who owns the copyright for it, but it should have been in an Epic collection, I think. So anyway, I haven't read all of this yet. It's got some thumbnails at the back, but what a weird book. Um, from Epic Comics. Never heard of it. If you've heard of it, good on you. Uh, wish you would have told me. Check out this one here. Robert Crumb Draws the Blues. Now, Robert Crumb, you might know him from like Mr. Natural, and he's done a lot of autobiographical comics and such. But he was a big fan of blues, like old school, the origin of blues, rhythm and blues. And so he did a lot of research. There are some not safe for work pictures in here, so I gotta be careful. But um, he was a prolific comic artist doing a lot of great stories. And so um he did this story, which is a bunch of little short stories about different jazz musicians and blues musicians. He eventually would do a trading card series of all different blues artists that he drew, and he did that through Clips. But this book was published from I think Kitchen Sink, no, Last Gasp, published by Last Gasp. Do they reprint Not Brand Ech in Epics? I thought those were only in Omnis. Sometimes they do, depending on the story. But a lot of especially the early '60s volumes, they have that's when Not Brand Ech was published originally. So they'd pull out like the Captain America related one and stick it in the Captain America epic. They didn't do that for all stories, just for some of them. So this is a cool book. Very neat. This one's called Omaha the Cat Dancer. Um, This one has I can't show you pretty much anything on the inside because there's a lot of not safe for work stuff, a lot of adult situations in here. But a story about a cat dancer, and she kind of it's a romance basically. She I don't know very much about it, but let's see here. What does it say? Uh, Omaha is an unusual comic that explicitly depicts ordinary and extraordinary adult relationships and activities in classic funny animal comics context. I think a lot of this, like the furry fans, a lot of that stems from stuff like this, which was published back in the 80s. This comic is in the book 1001 Comics You Must Read Before You Die. And um, I'm always on the lookout for those books because I want to have a really well-rounded grasp on comics, and so this is I picked this one up because of that for sure. Should be good. I think Omaha was used as evidence in some the obscenity cases back in the probably was. I wonder if those came from one donor or estate because they all had some awesome stuff. Yeah, it's very, uh, um, it's it's very possible because they all have a very similar kind of feel and stuff. Um, Oh, here's a great book. This one's large. Again, just $3 for this. It's got some spine damage, but most used copies of this book do because of just how big it is. The binding doesn't hold up very well. The Cat Who Walked in Beauty, it, another crazy cat book. There was a lot of crazy cat stuff there. I didn't get all of it. I left a lot of it there, but I got this one. It's the Panoramic Dailies of 1920. And this one um, shows off the amazing artwork. Um, it's hard to show this off here, but it's the dailies were really really large in the day. Not as large as they're being printed here, but they crammed in a lot of words, and they kind of have to be blown up in order for you to read a lot of the lettering that's in here. But this book is just super fun because Crazy Cat is just a wild character. Just a lot of funny stuff. Um, Here's another big one. This one's called The World on Sunday. And so if you can't tell, I love old comic strips. And this book here doesn't have any comic strips, but it's the artwork of newspapers because before the advent of photography, newspapers would hire illustrators to illustrate all of the things, the advertisements and stuff in here. And so this book is showcasing a lot of the artwork that isn't really seen today in newspapers. It's beautiful stuff. This is where a lot of comic strip artists got their start, was being newspaper illustrators, and um, and they would do boxing. They would do a lot of stuff on the sports pages, and eventually they started doing little funny drawings, and they put them in there, and people liked the funny drawings, and pretty soon became little 4-panel a little comic strip, and that's kind of the origin of comic strips is and stuff like this. So this book is just beautiful, reprinting these old pages of of really classic turn of the century art. There's so much detail, and the printing and the colors are very very amazing. Just look at that. And if you look at like Winsor McKay's Little Nemo in Slumberland, it's like you can tell that that guy was one of these newspaper illustrators before he got his own page in the comic strips. Really really cool. Okay, the rest. Oh, here's a good one. John Stanley Tubby. So this, because you can tell, is it was designed by Seth. It's got his unmistakable style to it. It's from Drawn and Quarterly, and it's part of the John Stanley Library. And John Stanley was who a writer who did a lot of work in comics. Um, sorry, an artist who did a lot of work in comics, especially on Little Lulu comics from Dell. And so Tubby was a supporting character in Little Lulu who got his own spin-off stories every once in a while. And these are just so much fun. Um, sure, let's see here, though. They are written by, oh, these ones are written by John Stanley as well. He didn't always write them, but um, script and layout by John Stanley. Uh, so there's a bunch of books in the series, including like 3 volumes of Nancy comics, and some Little Lou as well. But this one's all Tubby all the time, and it's great. If you haven't read any of these comics, if you love just humor comics from the golden age of comics, then I recommend picking these ones up. This was published a number of years ago, and it's probably out of print now. Where is it? Let's see here. 2010. Yeah, so this was 15 years ago. Wow. So there you go. Yeah. I got a damaged copy of that Tubby from In Stock Trades for half off a few months ago. Wow, that's great. Um, I read these stories and the Little Lulu stories as bedtime stories to my daughter, and she loved them. She would just crack up because they're so funny. It was a lot of fun reading. She doesn't let me read to her anymore. She's too old for that now, which is too bad. Here's a good one: The Great Comic Book Heroes by Jules Pfeiffer. Jules Pfeiffer, great cartoonist, did a lot of stuff in kind of the alternative newspapers, college newspapers, and that kind of stuff. And he was a big superhero fan. So this is his book about superheroes. And this came out, I think, in the 70s. Let's check the date on that. Oh, it's a Roman numeral 19 L 50 65. 1965. There you go. So there you go. Um, and he wrote a big essay about what's really cool about this. And this is before the days of collected editions, so getting reprints was a rare thing. He did a huge essay about the origin of comics, and then in the back here they reprint the first issues of like the origin stories of some of these characters. So we get the first issue of Superman, just the first story, not the full issue. The origin story of Superman, um, the origin story of Batman and Robin, the Joker, and then a Human Torch from Marvel Comics #1. That's the Android one, the Android Human Torch, and then the first appearance of the Flash, and let's see here, Green Lantern, the Spectre, Hawkman, Wonder Woman, and the Submariner. Where'd it go? There you go. Prince Namor the Submariner. Who wants an epic collection of this stuff, the Golden Age stuff by Bill Everett? That'd be great. And the last one is Captain America. Let's see, let's get the first page here. So oh, and Plastic Man too. I forgot about that. This was a book that and one story by the from the Spirit, so it kind of goes all over the place. That's great. I remember getting this book out from the library as a kid. There weren't very many comic books in the library, but there was this one, and that was really cool. This I'm so happy to have a copy of it now because it's very special. It's such a special book. So three more here. All of these huge hardcovers were just $3. Couldn't believe it. The next three books are kind of history books about comic strips, and this one's by Mort Walker, who was the guy behind like Beetle Bailey and a bunch of those strips that debuted in the 50s. And he was a huge comic book history fan as well. So he did a really nice. He's done a few books back in his day, a good overview of comic strip history and what it takes to make comics and all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of course, Beetle Bailey examples in here, uh, and a lot of art contributions from other people. Uh, there's some of his early work. Really awesome. Yeah. Stuff like this is great because oftentimes they'll include examples from strips that don't get a lot of attention, that you just don't hear about and such. So a lot of Beetle Bailey in this one, like I said. Um, so I haven't really taken a big look at that one yet. My pile's getting too high here. This one's called Great Comics, syndicated by the Daily News, New York, and Chicago Tribune. So they had a joint syndicate. It was two separate ones, and they eventually merged together. The Chicago Tribune is the force behind like Little Orphan Annie and Dick Tracy, and so this one has stories from the Gumps and Moon Mullins, Gasoline Alley, Brenda Starr, and it's just a whole bunch of comics. And again, this was all done before people were doing heavy reprints of comic strips. And so this was kind of the only stuff that you'd get. The quality and the printing quality is very suspect. Some of it's really hard to read. Um, they didn't have good machines and good restoration processes back this, but it is a piece of history. And there's some really rare stuff in here that has never been reprinted anywhere else. Like Winnie Winky, the uh, that this comic strip it never had um it's never had those uh really long reprint series like Dick Tracy, Moon Mullins. Yeah, so really great stuff here. A lot of fun reading. A lot of stuff that I've never read before, like Little Joe, the Teeny Weenies, Sweeney and Son. So yeah, it's good stuff. And then the last book I got here is called The Comics, an illustrated history of comic strip art by Jerry Robinson. And you may know Jerry Robinson from his work in like DC and stuff back in the Silver Age and Bronze Age. But he again, he a big comic book history fan. So he did this big book that takes you from the very beginning, the origins of newspaper comic strips, and so yeah, the formative years in 1896 to 1910, and bringing you all the way to what was present day when this book was published, which was, let's find out, 1974. So all of these books here, these big fat history books, this is the basis of comic strip historian history right here. These are the early people who took an interest in making sure that people knew about the old comic strips. Here's my favorite one, Terry and the Pirates, and and it's just remarkable work. So I'm glad to have these in my library because they are a good piece of history, um, comics. So here we go. I'm thrilled that they were just a couple bucks each. So that means I could have picked up a lot of them at a time. And um, yeah, just so cool. Those books couldn't have gone to a better home. Thank you very much. Do your children share your love and passion for older comics, assuming they're into comics, manga, of course? No, they do not. Um, I've tried, and I think Jerry Robinson was co-creator of the Joker. You're correct. That is correct. He was the co-creator of Joker. Um, I believe that's it's the same guy. Um, yeah, they are not so much. I find that it's harder for kids of this generation to engage with the older material than it is of kids from my generation. Not to say that there are no kids that won't do it, but I think kids today just have a lot more competing for their attention. And when I was growing up in the 80s, reading a comic book from the 80s and reading a comic book from the 60s, 20 years earlier, was not that different. There are differences, and there was differences in the way the stories were told, but they were not. They're not so. They're not so different. But say take a kid reading comics from today, and then give them from a comic from the '60s, which is now like so far in the past. You know, we're talking 60 years ago. Um, it's a harder pill to swallow. So they don't get engaged with that material as easily as I think we did. And the same thing with movies. Movies from the '60s, movies from the '80s. Sure, they're different, evolution of time and such, but they're not that different. But you take a movie from today and compare it with a movie from the '60s, and it's so wildly different that it's like kids they find it really hard to put themselves in the 1960s frame of mind. So I think once they get so maybe just world experience and understanding of the way the world used to work 60 years ago, which it's hard to do, they may be more interested in that stuff, but I'm not holding my breath. It's they the fan base of these old comics is getting smaller and smaller. So I do want to talk about Dick Tracy a little bit. Um, let's see if I can get. I'm going to share my screen so you can take a look here. I've got a big pile of books. I can't see my buttons anymore. Okay, so this is the complete Dick Tracy back in print soft covers. We're launching this on BackerKit. We usually do stuff through Kickstarter, but we're trying out this other platform as well because we've worked with BackerKit for fulfillment and stuff like that, and they're really great people to work with. So we thought we'd give this one a shot here. But the whole comic strip was reprinted, 15 years ago or so by the Library of American Comics and IDW. And all of those volumes, they were in nice hardcover volumes. There were 19 of them that collected about 2.5 years each. And they're long out of print. A lot of them are impossible to find. So the time is right to do a new edition of this. We're going to do it year by year, and we're going to do them in soft cover to keep the price point down a little bit. And we're jumping around to cover the areas that where the hardcovers are extremely out of print. And so we're starting with the 1950s, sorry, the 1940s. And we've got all new covers. We've commissioned some great comic artists to do some nice covers for us. And so there's 4 volumes. Jerry Ordway does this cover right here, which is very, very cool. And John K. Snyder does this one over here. Um, and Juan Jose Rip, and um, Stuart Kenneth Moore. Those are the 4 artists that we have doing covers for us. And we're putting them in these slip cases. So they're paperbacks, but we have vertical slip cases so that you can stack them on your bookshelf and they're not going to stick out because these are going to be 8.5 by 11 landscape books. And when you put them on just a regular, ordinary shelf, they stick out too much. So we thought, well, let's try this. It would be great to shelve them vertically. Putting them in slip cases means that they're not going to, bend and fold because they're soft covers standing upright. But it also makes sure that there's a spine facing out appropriately there. And we've got this great design of the two-way TV wrist radio that shows off some of the cover art. It's got a little die cut window in there, so that's pretty cool. Um, That Chester Gold cover art reminds me of Seth and Chester Brown's art. Yeah, there's some similarities there for sure. Sorry, just reading through your comments here. Some great comments. I'll revisit that after I go through this one a little bit. Anyway, if you're a backer, we also commissioned David Mack to do some artwork, so you can get a David Mack bookmark for some of you early backers. Um, there's the spreads. It's all black and white. The 6 dailies on a 2-page spread, and then the Sunday strip gets its own page. And we've got some rewards. Kickstarter's always like backer kid crowdfunding always has rewards. So this the print set. So this is some of the stuff that I got to design. I designed these stickers with all of the different villains that you see in these particular volumes in 1941 to 1944. And I'm also doing a trading card set. I'm doing a 36 card set of all of the villains that are in these books. And then on the back of the cards has it's Dick Tracy's case files, and so it has kind of little synopsis of the crimes that are committed in here. So I'm really excited about that. I love making trading cards. And then a big lithograph of Chester Gould's famous drawing that he did for Life magazine at one point, where Dick Tracy faces off against all of these famous villains, most of which are in the volumes that we are reprinting right here. So that's cool. If you back all 4 volumes for $99 right now, if you back within the first 48 hours, which is today and tomorrow. Otherwise, the regular price on these is 110. These are going to go to retail eventually, but they will be more expensive than buying them as a bundle here. And of course, there are different options as as usual. If you're a retailer, there's a retailer tier as well. And then you can also add on some of these as extras. So that's our campaign. I hope you take a look, even if you don't back it. I understand not everybody is goes for Kickstarters and that kind of stuff, but this is how we do it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Are older Clover Press projects available on BackerKit? I think that we have a store on BackerKit where you can get some of the older projects. I'm actually not sure. I'm not involved in that sort of thing. Curtis, when I first saw the cards, I said to my wife, I bet Curtis had a hand in these, especially remembering your interest in the comic writers and artists trading cards a while back. Absolutely. Very, very cool. I've done a couple of trading card sets now for Clover Press, including a Michael Allred trading card set that we did for the when we did a Kickstarter for that art book. All of his like ecstatics characters and such, which is pretty cool. Hardcore Caillou fan 2007 says, I'm 17 and I think the Library of American Comics is the best thing to exist. I want you guys to continue the Donald Duck books. So when I say that younger kids, like the younger generation, can't enter into this stuff, that's, of course there are exceptions. Hardcore Caillou fan sounds like you're the exception, and I appreciate that. I'm glad that you really like this material. We won't be able to continue the Donald Duck books because we no longer have a licensing deal with Disney. Fantagraphics has picked up that license now. So I know that they were reprinting the Silly Symphonies books that we did, and I hope that they have plans to do Donald Duck. That would be great. The hard thing about Donald Duck is that those books, when we were publishing them, they were in competition with the Carl Barks library that Fantagraphics were doing. So we were doing Donald Duck comic strip collections, and they were doing the comic book collections, and they're very different because everyone loves the comic books because they're adventure and they're exciting, and Carl Barks is a legend. Then the comic strip is all humor. A lot of it is silent. There's no talking in that comic strip, and it's done by a name by Al Taliaferro, who is not as well known as Carl Barks. And so if you had an option, if you could only buy one Donald Duck book and it was going to be either the Carl Barks or the comic strips, it was going to be the Carl Barks one. And so I think it was unfortunate that those books did not sell better. And IDW eventually said, you know what, they're not selling well enough for us, so we're going to put a stop to it. And but they're great. There were five, I think, four of the daily collections and 2 Sundays, and now they're getting pretty expensive to find on the secondary market, and that's too bad. Okay, I'm going to go um, back in time here a little bit to some of those older comments here. The Toon Grump says, the Toon Grump says, that's fair. I'm in my 20s and I love Silver Age stuff. It definitely took me a while to warm up to that denser writing style, but the cartooning of the time captivates me enough to make the journey worth it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what a lot of it is you have to have an affinity and be drawn to the artwork. And again, that stuff, the Silver Age artwork is very different than any sort of artwork that's done today. So, and everybody has a different taste. Some people don't like that stuff, and that's fine. My son, 12 years old, likes reading the Silver Age comics. He says, Dad, I like the drawing in these way better than more current comics, but sometimes there's a lot of words. Yeah, very true. Yeah. And that's great. I'm glad that he engages with that old stuff. Children often like to go their own way when it comes to hobbies and learning who they are in general. And as the older they get and know who they are, they may go back and give the older things a go. Yes. And I have my library will be waiting for them when that time comes. Um, yeah, well, that's our conversation for the day. I can't believe that we plowed through all of this stuff. These books are so amazing. I love comics of all sorts, not just epics and such. I love exploring new things and learning about new areas. And so, yeah, this collection that I picked up from the library sale is just incredible. With amazing cartoonists like Chester Gold, Harvey Kurtzman, Robert Crumb, Al Capp, Walt Kelly, Art Spiegelman and his crew. It's just really, really fun. So I'm going to have a great time plowing through all of these books. And I'm kind of glad that the DC horror book is not here at my house yet, because now I can read some of this while I'm waiting for that one. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out with me for this past almost an hour. It has been a lot of fun going through these books and talking about stuff. I don't get to talk about this kind of thing on these streams very much because it's mostly epic collections. So um, it's oh man, Phil. And so we bring down the curtain on another stream. Thank you. I like that one better. That one's way better. I might use that again. So the other good thing about these books that are 50 years old is that they smell really great. I love the smell of old paper. So my house is full of that. It doesn't smell as much as I want it to of old paper, but you can get whiffs of it when you're in my library. Thanks everybody for being on the stream with me and engaging in the comments section. It's great talking with all of you. Don't forget to like this video. It helps the algorithms, and I always appreciate the likes. Subscribe if you haven't done that as well. I'll be back next week, hopefully with I know I'll have a DC Finest in my hand, and hopefully I'll have some epic collections to show you too. But yeah, in the meantime, I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye, everyone.